Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Dick Cheney, a very important American vice president, died on November 3, 2025. He was 84 years old. Mr. Cheney was known as a powerful leader who greatly shaped American history. Many people had very strong feelings about him, both good and bad. His family was with him when he passed away. This included his wife Lynn and his two daughters Liz and Mary. They were by his side in his last moments. His life was full of big decisions and actions that influenced the United States and the world. Some people praised him as a brave patriot and a strong protector of America. They saw him as a leader who made the country safer, especially after the September 11 terrorist attacks. They believed his ideas helped fight global terrorism. However, many others strongly criticized his choices. They pointed to his central role in taking the nation into the war in Iraq. They also questioned how he greatly expanded the power of the vice president and the government. Immediately after his death, a large public debate began across the country. People started to talk a lot about his long career and his legacy. This discussion quickly highlighted the complex nature of his time in public service. Supporters remembered his dedication and his strength in tough times. They focused on his clear goals and his commitment to national security. But his critics reminded everyone of the parts of his career that caused problems. They spoke about the controversial policies he supported and the long-term effects of his decisions. This big debate showed that even after his passing, Dick Cheney remained a figure who brought out strong opinions from all sides. His lasting influence on American politics and government means that discussions about his impact will continue for many years. 2. His early life. Richard Bruce Cheney was born in Nebraska in 1941. He spent most of his early years and grew up in Wyoming, a state that would become deeply connected to his political life. After earning both a bachelor's and a master's degree in political science from the University of Wyoming, Cheney began his career in Washington, D.C. He started as a simple intern for Congressman William A. Steiger, a first step that would lead him to the highest levels of American power. His political rise was quick. In 1975, at just 34 years old, he became the youngest White House Chief of Staff in history for President Gerald Ford. This was a very important job, placing him at the heart of government during a challenging period for the country. Watching new laws limit presidential authority after events like Watergate, Cheney formed a strong belief. He thought these limits were not good and made it hard for a president to lead effectively. This idea about strong executive power would guide him throughout his career. After serving President Ford, Cheney returned to his home state. In 1978, the people of Wyoming elected him as their U.S. representative to Congress. He served 6 terms, from 1979 to 1989, making a name for himself in the House of Representatives. During these 10 years, he worked closely with other Republican leaders, including President Ronald Reagan, and eventually became the House Minority Whip, a key leadership role for his party. His colleagues recognized his sharp mind and skill in politics. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush appointed Cheney as the Secretary of Defense. In this role, Cheney was responsible for the entire U.S. military. He led the country's defense during 2 important military actions. The most significant was Operation Desert Storm, known as the Gulf War, in 1991. Cheney played a crucial part in this conflict, persuading King Fahd of Saudi Arabia to allow over 400,000 U.S. troops into the region. The quick and decisive victory over Iraqi forces during the Gulf War, largely due to air power, strengthened Cheney's belief in using American military might forcefully when needed. He continued as Secretary of Defense until 1993, at the end of President Bush's term. After leaving government service for a time, Cheney worked for a conservative think tank and later became the CEO of a major oil industry company. But his time in Washington and his experiences in these early, powerful roles had already shaped his views and prepared him for future national leadership. 3. The powerful Vice President. George W. Bush, who wanted to be president, asked Dick Cheney for help in 2000. Bush asked Cheney to find a good person to be his vice president. After looking at many people, Bush surprised everyone. He asked Cheney to be his running mate instead. Cheney first thought about it because the vice president's job was usually not very important. It mostly meant doing public events and helping with money for campaigns. But Cheney had other ideas for the role. He famously told people he had a different understanding with President Bush about what his job would be. This sentence showed that Cheney planned to make the vice president's role much stronger and more central. When they won the close election in 2000, Cheney began to change the job right away. He set up offices in both the White House and the Congress building. This unusual step placed him at the heart of all government actions, allowing him to be involved in many decisions. His first year in office was changed forever by terrible events. On September 11, 2001, terrorists attacked America. These attacks hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. President Bush was away visiting an elementary school in Florida. Vice President Cheney was in the White House when the second plane struck the World Trade Center. Quickly, Secret Service agents took Cheney to a safe, underground emergency operations center. He stayed there for several weeks, overseeing important government work. During this big national crisis, Cheney took powerful charge. He made sure the government could continue to work and function. He advised President Bush not to come back to Washington, D.C. immediately to ensure the president's safety. Cheney also coordinated the movement of congressional leaders to a protected facility outside the city. He showed very strong and decisive leadership, working quietly behind the scenes to give much more power to the president's office and the executive branch. After these terrible attacks, Cheney's main goal became clear: to lead the fight against terrorism around the world. This new, intense focus guided many of his major actions and policies in the years that followed. He became a key figure in the global effort to stop terrorism. 4. The War in Iraq. Dick Cheney held a very strong belief that the United States needed to take military action against Iraq. Even before the September 11th attacks, he felt that Iraq posed a serious danger. After the attacks, he worked hard to convince President George W. Bush, the American Congress, and the public that invading Iraq was necessary and right. He carefully chose advisors for President Bush who also believed that Saddam Hussein, Iraq's leader, had to be removed from power. A very important moment in this effort happened on August 26, 2002. Cheney gave a famous speech at a meeting for war veterans in Nashville, Tennessee. In this speech, he made many big claims about Iraq's military power and its plans. He stated clearly, "There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt he is collecting them to use against our friends, our allies, and against us." He also said that Iraq was trying to get nuclear weapons again, and that simply inspecting the country would not work. These strong statements from Cheney were said with complete confidence. However, they were different from what some defense and intelligence officials were saying in private. Many intelligence officers had more careful opinions about Iraq's weapons. Despite this, Cheney and his main assistant, Louis Scooter Libby, visited the CIA headquarters many times. They asked intelligence analysts many questions about Iraq's weapons and any connections to al-Qaeda. Some CIA analysts later said they felt pressured to change their reports to match what the Bush administration wanted to hear. This pushing by political leaders to influence intelligence reports was a serious issue. After much discussion and planning, the invasion of Iraq began on March 19, 2003. The United States started its military operation, called Operation Iraqi Freedom, with powerful bombings in Baghdad. American leaders had hoped that the troops would be welcomed as liberators. However, the war quickly changed from a normal military fight to a long period of occupation and fighting against groups inside Iraq. As the war continued, a very important fact became clear. No weapons of mass destruction were ever found in Iraq. Also, no real connection between Saddam Hussein and the terrorist group al-Qaeda was ever proven. The main reasons given for starting the war turned out to be false. Even though these facts became known, Dick Cheney continued to defend the war. For the rest of his life, in many interviews and public talks, he said that going into Iraq was the right decision. He kept saying this even when there was no evidence to support the original reasons for the war. This steady defense of the war, without admitting any mistakes or showing regret, was a key part of his public image. It made him different from other leaders who had been involved in the war, like former Secretary of State Colin Powell, who later expressed doubts about the war and the intelligence used to justify it. 5. More power at home. After the terrible attacks on September 11, the government changed many things at home. Dick Cheney believed the president needed more power to keep America safe. He thought that laws made after the Watergate scandal made the president too weak. He wanted to make the president's office stronger and have fewer checks on its power from Congress or the courts. One big change was how the government collected information. Congress passed the Patriot Act. This law gave the government new ways to gather intelligence. But Cheney pushed for even more. He supported secret surveillance programs. For example, the National Security Agency, or NSA, began listening to American citizens' phone calls and reading their emails. These programs often happened without special court orders, which usually protect people's privacy. Another controversial action was the use of tough questioning methods. The Bush administration, with Cheney's strong support, allowed these methods for people held in secret places. Many groups and people around the world said these methods were torture. Techniques included things like waterboarding, where people felt like they were drowning. They also included keeping people awake for a long time or forcing them to stay in painful positions. At least 39 people held by the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, were questioned using these methods. Cheney always defended these actions. He said they were important and necessary to get information and stop future terrorist attacks. He even said that waterboarding was just like a dunk in the water. He believed that keeping America safe was the most important thing, even if it meant using harsh methods that others called torture. Even after he left office, Cheney never changed his mind. In an interview in 2018, he said he would use these programs again if he could. He always put national security first, above concerns for civil liberties. He played a key part in expanding the power of the president, often doing so in ways that were not public. 6. His personal life. Dick Cheney faced many serious health problems during his life. His heart health was especially difficult. He had his first heart attack in 1978 when he was only 37 years old. Over the years, he suffered 4 more heart attacks. These events showed how determined he was to keep working despite his illness. Doctors said his heart issues were partly due to his family history and his past as a heavy smoker. In 2010, after his 5th heart attack, his condition was very bad. He received a special pump for his heart called a left ventricular assist device. This device helped his heart work and meant he lived for almost 2 years without a pulse. Then, in 2012, he had a heart transplant surgery. This was a big and risky operation for a man in his early 70s, but it saved his life. His doctor said he was an easiest patient because he never let his health stop him. During his time as vice president, there was even worry that terrorists might try to hack his heart device, so its wireless connection was turned off. Beyond his health, two other big events marked Cheney's personal life and career. The first was a famous hunting accident. In February 2006, he was hunting quail in Texas. He accidentally shot his friend, Harry Whittington, with birdshot. Mr. Whittington was hit in the face, neck, and body. He needed hospital care and even had a heart attack and other problems from the pellets. The government did not tell the public about the accident right away, which caused some criticism. Cheney later said it was one of the worst days of my life and took full responsibility. Mr. Whittington recovered and said he held no hard feelings towards Cheney. The accident became a well-known story and was often joked about. Another important event was a political scandal involving a CIA agent named Valerie Plame. Her husband had criticized the government. In return, some government officials told reporters that Valerie Plame was a secret CIA agent. This put her life and work at risk. Louis Scooter Libby, who was Cheney's chief of staff, was charged with lying and stopping justice during the investigation. Libby was found guilty, but President George W. Bush stopped him from going to jail. Years later, President Donald Trump gave Libby a full pardon. Cheney said he was not involved in leaking Plame's name, but Libby's court statements made some people doubt this. This event showed the fierce politics and power struggles during Cheney's time in office. 7. His last years. After leaving the White House in January 2009, Dick Cheney stayed active in politics. He often spoke out, especially criticizing President Obama's policies on national security. He believed that the new administration was making America weaker. However, over time, his political standing within the Republican Party started to decline. The war in Iraq, which he strongly supported, had not led to stability, and the dangerous weapons he spoke of were never found. Also, the major financial crisis of 2008, which many people connected to his earlier work in business, further damaged his reputation. A very significant shift happened with the rise of Donald Trump in politics. Cheney had first supported Trump's run for president in 2016, but he became deeply concerned by Trump's actions and behavior, particularly after the attack on the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. Cheney publicly spoke against Trump, calling him a threat to our republic and a coward. He accused Trump of trying to steal the previous election by using lies and violence. In a surprising move in September 2024, Cheney announced his support for the Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris in the presidential election. This was a remarkable turn for a man who had been one of the most powerful Republican figures. Cheney declared in a statement that in the nation's 248 years, no figure had posed a greater danger to the country than Donald Trump. He firmly believed that Trump could not be trusted with power again. While Harris's campaign tried to use Cheney's endorsement to win over some anti-Trump Republicans, it did not largely succeed in changing many votes. When Dick Cheney died in November 2025, there were many different reactions across the political spectrum. Former President George W. Bush released a statement calling Cheney a decent, honorable man and a patriot. President Joe Biden, while noting their many political disagreements, also mentioned Cheney's strong belief in family. Vice President Kamala Harris expressed sadness and called him a committed public servant who dedicated his life to the nation. Notably, Donald Trump chose not to issue any public statement about Cheney's passing. Within the Republican Party, some leaders like Senator Lindsey Graham and House Speaker Mike Johnson offered tributes, praising Cheney's intelligence and service. Yet, some of Donald Trump's strongest supporters expressed negative views. Among Democrats and progressive commentators, feelings were complex. Many appreciated his late criticism of Trump, but they also remembered his controversial past actions, such as his central role in the Iraq War and his support for harsh interrogation methods. This showed that Cheney's legacy remained a subject of strong debate and different opinions until the end. 8. The final word. Dick Cheney had a very long and important career in American politics. He served many presidents, from being a young chief of staff to becoming a powerful vice president. Many people remember him most for his time with President George W. Bush. In those years, especially after the September 11 attacks, he took a strong lead in how America fought terrorism. He also changed the job of vice president, making it much more powerful than before. His decisions, like leading the country into the Iraq War, caused a lot of discussion. Many questions still remain about the reasons for that war and what happened to the people there. Cheney also pushed for the president to have more power in government. This included new ways to watch people and strong methods of questioning, which some called torture. He always said these actions were needed to keep America safe. Because of his actions, people still have very different ideas about him. Some call him a great patriot. They say he was a devoted public servant who protected the nation in hard times. Others see him as a man who caused much harm. They point to the war and the way executive power grew too much. In his last years, Cheney even spoke against Donald Trump, calling him a danger to the country. This was surprising to many, as Cheney himself had done much to expand presidential power. His life shows the hard choices that leaders must make between keeping a country safe and keeping its people free. He changed the American government forever, making the president's office much stronger. His story makes us think about what is right and wrong when a country faces big dangers. It asks how much power leaders should have and what price we pay for safety. What do you think is the most important lesson from Dick Cheney's long public life?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.